Hey, everyone joining us in world and online, whether it's on X, LinkedIn, or YouTube. Welcome to the second day of Decentraland Game Expo and our first live panel event of today. So wherever you are joining us in the world right now, you are very welcome to our expert panel on cross-world compatibility. It's an absolute pleasure to have some of the absolute geniuses in the industry with us. For this panel, we have Jason, Lisa, Felix, and Matt. I'm going to let them do their own introductions because, it's going to be an absolutely, I think it's a swear word, an excellent panel this afternoon. We're going to be at the same time diving into world. So if you can join us in Decentraland at 081, you see we're all kind of congregating right now in Decentraland Game Expo Plaza. We're going to be teleporting between some booths and collecting some fabulous wearables at the same time. So to start our panel off, I'm going to ask everyone to briefly introduce yourselves and your current project. And Jason, I'm going to pick on you first. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you're working on?
Sure. My name is Jason DeSimone, aka Lost Local, and I work on the business development and brand strategy side with Aavegotchi. Aavegotchi is a decentralized gaming protocol. We are community owned and community governed. We have fully self-funded, and everything that happens in our ecosystem is voted on by our DAO. We are approaching the launch of Gotchi Chain, which is an L3 dedicated to crypto gaming. And we're super excited to be here showing off a little bit of what we've been working on and to be alongside some of our OG friends, Matt and Rizzle and all those great folks.
With that, Matt, I'm going to call you in.
Cool. Yeah, my name is Matthew, aka Niftytime. My day job, I'm a creative lead over at Nifty Gateway, where I've worked for over 3.5 years at this point, helping make digital artists rich, put over $250 million in their pockets over my time here. But the reason why I'm here today is because I'm also co-founder of the WHIP meetup. It's a regular virtual meetup where we hop around different metaverses every Thursday, 12 p.m. Pacific. Created this together with my dude Rizzle that Jason already mentioned. And we do fun, weird things in virtual spaces all the time, introducing new projects, places, and spaces to our amazing community.
I would say we've got a bit of a tie-in today. So after this space finishes, we are going to be jumping over to the WHIP meetup. We're going to be giving more details at the end of this panel, but we're going to be jumping in and collecting even more wearables and having our crazy anarchic WHIP experience after this panel. So if you can stay with us, just a heads up that we're going to have a double session to celebrate day 2 of Decentraland Game Expo. Lisa, can I bring you in?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you can hear me, and thanks so much for having me, Bay. And I feel very privileged because I'm a reporter and a writer in this space, and I get to meet with a lot of the projects, a lot of the games across various ecosystems. So yeah, I'm happy to be here and delighted to participate. And I also created the first Irish pub in the Sandbox, but I'm hoping to create an Irish pub or an Irish street in every metaverse. That is the goal. So yeah, I'm delighted to be here and delighted to discuss cross-compatibility.
That's a super worthwhile goal. I'm with you on that one. Felix.
Hey everybody, I'm Felix Norden, also known as Felix Norden all over the webs. I am doing a lot of things in the space. I'm here today mainly representing Neo Tokyo. So I'm the head of the dev division and one of the community leaders of Neo Tokyo. For those who don't know what Neo Tokyo is, it's founded by Elliot Trades and Alex Becker, and it's focused around being like a crypto gaming Illuminati who's now these days is kind of transformed into a big group or a big network of builders around the whole crypto scene, which is very, very interesting. Outside of that, I tend to keep myself busy with a lot of different things. I am mainly running my own company that is known as Mure, which focuses on like transactional infrastructure and making it easy for people to fundraise. And that is because I have backgrounds in the tech scene, but also heavily into the venture capital scene when it comes to Web3. So pleasure to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you and everyone on the panel today. I think before we start diving into the big topic, which is compatibility, we're going to take everyone in Plaza on a little tour to the Aavegotchi booth. So we're going to be jumping. So if you are in world with us right now, I encourage you. There's about close to 300 of us listening in live right now on the various channels. If you are not yet in world, jump into Decentraland 0821. You are going to be greeted by a lot of community members in there that can kind of show you the ropes if this is your first time. If you're already in there with us right now, I'm going to be just looking across onto my other screen. And I'm going to be typing in the chat box our coordinates. So we're going to be jumping to -274, which is the Aavegotchi booth. You can see it makes a hyperlink if you are in there with us right now. Just click on that, and that is going to transport us across. So Jason, I'm going to bring you in first as we approach your booth. Now, here we go. And can you tell me a little tiny bit about what cross-game compatibility is for Aavegotchi right now as we explore this space with you?
Sure. I think our ecosystem is actually a great example of that in its own, right? So as we approach the launch of Gotchi Chain, we'll be going live with likely over a dozen titles. Our characters, some of our gaming assets, and of course our tokens are going to carry over across all of those titles, so that when you're playing any games in the Aavegotchi virtual console ecosystem, you'll see some uniformity in those assets and in those tokens. I think on the on a bigger scale, when we talk about cross-platform and cross-game compatibility, I do think that this is all following very similar trends to the way that we saw trade and commerce develop in the real world, where once we see the acceptance of currency or tokens from one ecosystem to the other, I think those are going to be kind of some big signals of collaboration and the beginning stages of how games and ecosystems choose to interact with each other. And that's part of the reason that we designed our gaming ecosystem the way we did. We wanted to create one uniform experience where someone could come in and play MMORP or a casual, hyper casual game, but still be in that same IP and asset realm.
So you have the sense that you can come in and play different MMOs, different ways of interacting, but still being in the same overarching universe.
Right, and have some similarity in the assets that are being used. We think that the crypto element of gaming is going to be a bit of a learning curve for many people. So obviously folks, they're used to having digital assets in different iterations in current games, but we do think that creating some uniformity on like the financial ecosystem on the back end across multiple games is going to be, inviting and comfortable for a lot of folks that this is going to be newer for.
Matthew, can I bring you in? How does that compare with your definition right now of cross-chain? Cross-game, cross-chain.
Yeah, so the way that we've thought about it within the WIT context specifically, because we're just like this traveling menagerie of crazy avatars basically, and that like the technical, I guess, roadblocks that we run into from time to time have to deal with like avatars, like porting your virtual identity that you're used to in like Decentraland over to CryptoVoxels or Nifty Island, blah, blah, blah. Like those are the technical barriers that we're running into, but most of these projects are open to supporting the avatar, generally accepted avatar types, the GLBs, CryptoVoxels being an exception. But that's been the only technical thing that we've had to consider for the most part. Other than that, community itself has been that bridge between the different virtual spaces and chains and things like that. And with the community to kind of leverage that and be able to hop between chains and different games and spaces, it's about creating like a regular ritual that folks can rely on, right? So the fact that we meet basically every single Thursday at 12 p.m. Pacific never ever changes. That's been a great way to have that audience that you can travel around and hop around with and give them whatever specific instructions they need to know to join a specific game or place.
So there's a sense that for you, the community, giving them that static space, that predictable meeting point, that means that your community is almost like providing this cross-game kind of moving menagerie itself.
Exactly. The regularity does a lot of the heavy lifting for you, right? Depending, every week is going to be a different experience, a different world, potentially leveraging different chains, right? Some like non-EVM chains too. So if you have that regular group that you're able to hop around with, the incremental kind of communication of what's different compared to something else is that much easier, because you have the people to actually say things to, as opposed to shouting out into a void with like, hey, if you have time, come over here, do this long laundry list of things in order to join in. It really does mitigate that huge challenge that pops up whenever a new game pops up that is on a different chain, or all those different variables that you have to contend with for the different experiences.
Felix, I see you nodding. How does this compare for your perspective from the new Tokyo side?
I mean, it's a very, very interesting problem / conundrum that we're facing, both the cross game side and also the cross chain side. Cross chain is definitely more difficult because having multiple instances of one asset like an NFT isn't necessarily a good thing. And instead, you would have to make sure that you can do bridging and whatnot. So but that's a problem that is being solved, and a lot of people are trying to tackle the cross-chain compatibility as well. And I think one of the key things there is working with like token-based asset compatibility, which means that you could tie different game assets to the same NFT, which means you could have. I think there are some standards that are coming out for that as well already. I know RMRK has been working on it, but it's about basically providing different renditions or game files and whatnot of the NFT and tying it to the metadata, which is actually a very, very interesting thing that you can do, because then you can you can decentralize the creation or the creational process and allow people to reuse already existing assets, which is a thing that I think is very, very powerful, because then you could have 2D versions and 3D versions of profile pictures. The main rendering would be the profile pic, and then you could have different assets for different game engines like Unreal Engine 5, Unreal Engine 4. You could have it for Unity and so on. And that's where I think the long-term space is going to, or the long-term scope or target is going to be looking like for the cross-gaming side to actually exist in Web3. And Web3 is a great vehicle to achieve it. It's definitely possible to do elsewhere as well, but given that we have the tokens of ownership and so on around it, it makes things easier to distribute, in my opinion.
Lisa, from a journalistic perspective, how does that compare to your definition right now?
Yeah, I'm taking notes as we go along from a journalism point of view, but from a gamer point of view, or from a project that wants like My Irish Pub to be played in numerous games and to be transported into numerous portals, I think I completely agree with what Matt said. The community is so key and it's so important in Web3, and we heard that yesterday in the talks from Tashi and Cryptomon and the guys there. They believe that the community holds the magic dust to what they do. And like what you said, if you can have a community and they follow you wherever you go, like Elon and Tesla, if Elon created a different version of Tesla tomorrow, they'd follow him. So I think that the power of community and to bring people from one platform to another could be underestimated. I also think that for Web 2 games looking into Web 3 and saying, oh, well, I'm not really sure. I'm like, well, you see this community. You see what happens when there's ownership involved, when they have like tokens, when they have digital assets they want to bring with them into other portals. Then if we can create that and if we can really showcase that in an easy format, I will say at the moment, I think it's still very hard to see between worlds, like what's happening, and everyone's doing their own thing within their own world, like and building out that ownership component in their own world and in their own token. But if we can start to see that cross compatibility and interoperability between worlds, then I think that would really showcase the value of Web3 to another level, and it would really contrast to what we see today in Web 2, because the Fortnites and the Roblox of the world which are amazing and have like millions of users, but they're very about themselves, you know, and promoting their own brand and having their own assets and having their own ecosystem, whatever. Whereas in Web3, if we hold the values of Web3 to account and have that like ownership, shared community, and kind of giving things back to the creator, if we hold that to account, then I think that could be really great going forward.
These are all, yeah, it's such an interesting sphere that we're opening up in this panel right now. I want to give a shout out to everybody in World. So we are right now at the Aavegotchi booth, which is at -274. If you are watching on any of our live channels now, we're edging up to 500 people watching live. Please do jump into World if you can at decentraland.org. We're currently at Aavegotchi, and I've kind of got a sort of segue into our next question, because over in this corner, we have a wearable. So if you're with us in World, you can see there's an amazing dispenser over here with an Aavegotchi wearable, the cutest kawaii beanie hat that you can claim for free by visiting the booth and pressing the button. Now, I have a confession to make. So I minted this wearable to kind of make the deadlines. And Jason, as I was minting it, one of the things about Decentraland is that wearables can be exported as VRMs for use between different worlds. So I had that moment of deciding, should I enable VRM export on this wearable or should I not? And because we were so close to deadline, I was like, okay, I'm not going to enable it. And I've actually had DMs from community about this today saying, hey, Bay, why can't we use this as a VRM? So I kind of wanted to talk about challenges right now and kind of come to you first. Was that the right decision from Aavegotchi? And also, what other challenges do you see right now in terms of cross-platform use of assets?
Yeah, as far as that decision, I think we probably would have obviously, I think it would have been better if it was a VRM and could have been used outside of this, but I know we were right back against the wall with the deadline. So as it is.
That's my fault for everybody listening in. It was me that made that decision, not Aavegotchi.
But no hard feelings. Totally understand, of course. As far as other challenges, I think the biggest challenge is just like how amorphous this industry is right now, and the fact that we are still maybe not the most popular topic, but I like to bring up the presidential election a lot because I feel like that's got a lot to do with what we're kind of waiting for. We are building an industry on something that is not yet technically an asset class. So I think that as we develop more understanding around how all of those elements are going to work in the business world, because this is a business-driven endeavor at the end of the day, I think it'll be much easier for us to navigate the landscape. So, for us, it's about not locking into too many decisions that are going to come back to bite us in the butt later on or become difficult to backtrack on. So it's forecasting a lot of the time, I think is, there's no one to ask at this point, like what the right thing to do is. So I think, I can't speak for everyone on the dev side, but I think from strategy, that's something that I see as being a bit of a hurdle. It also makes it difficult to create partnerships that are maybe as meaningful as we would want them to be, because there's just limitations at this point with what we can say, what we can do. So I find that to be a bit of a struggle currently.
Felix, can I bring you in on the challenges you're seeing from your side?
Sure thing. So challenges in what sense? When it comes to the tech side, when it comes to the business side?
Which ones are hurting you the most right now?
I mean, I would definitely double down on what Los Loco were saying right there, and that is the case that business-driven wise, it's actually quite difficult to push into great success right now, given the landscape that we're in, and especially in the gaming scene, Web3 has been very, very criticized for quite a while. I think it kind of goes hand in hand with the tech side to actually prove how good it can function. But there's also then the whole question of abstraction, because I don't think we necessarily should let the technology lead. It's more about showing how good something can function from the value of the product itself. And then over time, kind of disclose more and more that how the underlying underpinnings are actually built, and show why this technology is so great through the use case of it instead. And that's kind of what has been good and bad with the Web3 space so far, I would say. It's that people have been feeling like everything has been super, super cool, the tech is fantastic and so on, and then there's a lot of hype, but we haven't necessarily solved a lot of problems that we would look to solve. And I think that's what we are lacking to really make sure that this is going to hit off. So I would say that's the main problem. If
you're looking at those tech problems more closely, which do you think are the ones that are really, really providing the blockers right now?
Barrier to entry, I think blockchain understanding and interfacing with the blockchain is the biggest thing from a technical perspective, because even though the dev scene has matured a lot over the last few years, like I got into the dev scene of Web3 in 2021, and the toolkits that were around then were bearable. At this point in time, things are going super, super well. Things are way, way, way better, and we're really catching up pace. But with that, the learning curve is also growing. So it's hard for people to learn about the concepts of blockchain, and it's also intimidating to a lot of people. So I think that's the biggest problem in getting people to understand that the blockchain more often than not is a smart database, at least for the cases where we have the EVM and Ethereum and so on to work with.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So thinking about that barrier to entry as being this big blocker, and even widening that barrier out to what we're talking about now, which is that being able to access this on whatever platform, whatever chain you choose.
Yeah, exactly.
Matt, can I bring you in as well?
Yeah. So honestly, all these challenges and obstacles are, like, for the whip itself, opportunities. With our community, the infinite game that we like to play is exploring the bleeding edge of this kind of like crypto-powered virtual sector. And with these challenges, there's always going to be new solutions. And there's a lot of solutions and attempts at solving or sanding off some of these rough edges that pop up. And that's what we love to present to our community, so that we can get like a real-time litmus test of, oh, this is a order of magnitude improvement over approaching this side of things. Or, oh my God, I can now bring in and port whatever I've been excited about in the space into this new project, et cetera, et cetera. So the fact that there's distinct challenges is great, because that just means there's going to be more people taking shots on goal with very cool, novel innovations and getting those in front of real regular users to see how it responds. This is how we build, honestly.
So for you, it's just an opportunity. Like you see these barriers to entry for you, they're just an opportunity. It's how you build.
Exactly. And again, like the whip itself is optimized for this exploration, for this like beta testing live together with other folks. This is something that if you get excited about being in a bleeding edge niche that is itself in a bleeding edge niche, there's no lack of opportunity or no lack of just fun, engaging things to pursue. And all these projects that are bringing something new to the table, they're in search of those real people to present this to, so that they can get real-time feedback and stuff. So total opportunity.
Lisa, for you, opportunity, barrier to entry, where are you right now?
I don't know. Like if I think about, again, going back to yesterday's talks and to talks that I've had with gaming investors in the space for the last maybe year and a half, I was speaking to a few gaming guilds and a few investors that look specifically at Web3 games. And their thing is make it easy, make it as easy as possible for people to get in, so kind of cut out the UX crap, really, focus on what the player wants. Because one investor that I speak quite frequently with, he spoke about the time, right? So the time that a player already invests in Web2 gaming. So So you're essentially tapping into a little piece of his time, you know, and maybe converting him and maybe asking him to consider a Web3 game, and then, then he really likes it, and then he understands it, and then he gets involved in the community, and then he's like hooked, right? But there is that like crossover from Web2 gamers to Web3 gamers. Like, I'm not a Web2 gamer, but I'm very interested in the metaverse. I'm very interested in wearables. I'm very interested in being involved in experiences in the metaverse. I feel it's very different to being a gamer. But if you're trying to convert a gamer, gamers are already invested in the Web2 space. They already spend hours in Fortnite, hours in Roblox, hours in Minecraft, League of Legends. There's like Zelda. There's like so many games that are like up there. And even looking in the conversations over the last few weeks in different gaming conferences, and yours specifically, Bay, yesterday, with Tashi and Cryptomon and a few of the guys, like they had listed like maybe 5 or 6 games in the Web2 world that they love and that they are go-to for them, you know, when they're in a different mood. So I'm like, okay, well, you know, you need to understand that they have excellent UX experiences for their users, for their players, and you need to match that. And if you're not willing to do that, then you need to provide an ulterior motive for them to get in, and that is the cross compatibility, that is the bringing assets, the ownership side of things, the tokenomics, the financial and emotional incentives of being part of the game. So we need to be very like bullish on communicating the values of Web3 in comparison to Web2, and not try too much to be to be a competitor to those games. You know, those games already have millions of users. They have all our Web3 players already. So let's differentiate ourselves. And I think that compatibility and sharing of assets could really be a cool differentiator if we allow it to happen in a very, I don't know how to make it in an organic way, because it's very hard. I'm not a developer, and I know it takes years to make these things work. But if we can make it work, I think the standards of digital assets across Web3 games could be very interesting in terms of ownership.
This is super interesting. I think when I put this panel together, I was kind of imagining lots of discussions about standards, about assets, but what we've been talking about so far is this migration of community, the kind of creation of community, and then bring it across these different games, platforms, environments, by providing this experience that you can then take across each of these platforms. And we're not even limiting this discussion to Web3. We're saying it's about taking these communities from even Web2 gaming and showing how they can extend their play, how they can extend their enjoyment, how they can extend their community into different gaming environments. Okay. We are going then to do a bit of jumping ourselves. So we're going to jump back to Decentraland Game Expo Plaza. We're going to be at 081. For anyone joining us in live across the various social channels, we're in Decentraland right now talking about cross-game compatibility. We are having an amazing panel. We're going to be jumping though in world from where we are right now, which is the Aavegotchi booth, to the center of Decentraland Game Expo, which is at 081. And as we do that, I would love for our panelists to think about examples. So we've already had this great example of the WIP meetup, big plug. We're going to be heading there after this panel to experience some of this for ourselves. But examples beyond that, where do you see this working right now in terms of cross-game compatibility, whether that's limited to Web3 or widening that discussion up into something that's working for you in other communities? Felix, would you like to take that one first as we jump?
Yeah, sure thing. More than happy to. I would say like one of the biggest value props that other communities and products have been given to Neo Tokyo over the years is derivative assets for their games or for their platforms and so on of people's citizens and people's NFTs as a whole, which has been like a great way to show examples of how the Neo Tokyo ecosystem can continue living on in other areas of the metaverse and in the gaming space and whatever you want to call it. So that's a great example. Whether or not it's going to be working well is a separate question, because this all began before you had things like the 6551 standard going into token standards and we'll talk about, but basically NFTs that can hold other NFTs, because there are many different ways to solve this whole cross-compatibility issues and these problems that are in existence, but we just need to figure out a good way to actually achieve them and execute on them. It doesn't really matter how you get from A to B, but getting to B is probably the main goal. But yeah, I would say that's the primary example that came to mind.
So for you, that's standard where we can associate more than one asset type to the same NFT.
Yeah, I mean, so one thing would be, like we talked about before, cross or multi-asset NFTs, which is basically one NFT, one token, having multiple off-chain resources or basically game asset files. I think that's the cleanest and easiest way of doing it. That means that you need to have multiple providers to provide that unless you want to build everything yourself. The other thing would be to also make it composable in the sense that that token can then get other tokens that could have that metadata on them as well. So you could basically mix the two as well and make it so you can have a good base layer with resources and whatnot to represent on most of the platforms, and then you can actually extend it more or let others extend it more by transferring or minting more such NFTs onto that particular NFT.
Jason, can I bring you in on this one?
Sure. This is always a fun topic of conversation because Aavegotchis were container NFTs well before the 6551 standard. We created our Aavegotchis to hold different wearables, which all have in-game characteristics and traits that carry over. So this has been an awesome opportunity for us to create partnership wearable collections with other communities. We did one with Lil Pump back in the day, and we've did one with the Sandbox, and we've done various collabs. But the wearables and these in-game assets are an awesome way to bring in other communities and to kind of share some of the experience. So we were excited to see that kind of catch on. Of course, a little bitter that very few people acknowledged that we were doing it for a while, but as it, that's how it goes here in Web3 land. But yeah, I think that's been an extremely valuable leverage point for us to be able to bring other communities in and to bring IP in a meaningful way, and then have those assets, actually carry over into in-game experiences.
And thinking about that, can you give me a specific example of a partnership where that's really worked for you?
The Lil Pump one went really, really well. That was one where we had there was just a lot of price action on that wearable. As we move into gameplay, I think we're going to see more meaningful application of that. But at this point, it's been mostly hype and IP labs, what this entire industry is built on. But I think moving forward, we actually had a very interesting conversation last night with an awesome partner that we're doing a wearable set with that I cannot say anything about, but that one in particular is probably the best example. And of course, I can't talk about it.
Of course. When can we hear about it?
September.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's the alpha. Matt, can you bring you in beyond the whip? What's your favorite example right now of something that's working?
I don't know if I would say that it's working 100%. I feel like what Nifty Island is doing offers a glimpse at a potential working future where Nifty Island itself is sort of acting or presenting itself as a potential platform for multiple communities to bring in their IP or whatever in game and kind of throw multiple communities in together and bring reducing the gap between these different community groups within the context of their gaming space or gaming world, and reducing that sort of proximity or making the proximity much more powerful and just visualize within the game, and shooting one another in a game and it's oh my god, there's a Bored Ape over there I just murdered or oh, an Aavegotchi ghost that just murked me from behind. Things like that bring folks together in enjoyable context and experiences is great. I don't know if that is the form factor to help kind of bring these projects together to kind of stimulate interaction that can then in turn result in maybe closer partnerships somehow. But that's been one of the most interesting experiments I've seen play out recently, trying to merge or bring together multiple different communities.
I should have a big shout out to our Nifty Island Decentraland crossover community as well right now. You can see there's a LAN party going in Decentraland in 0821 Plaza. A lot of our community are very active in both worlds. So shout out to all the DCL people that are migrating between those two environments. I know there's a lot of crossover on our side too. Lisa, what for you is working?
Yeah, I love the whole Nifty Island concept, the whole idea that there's already existing communities that are really passionate about their projects and they want to engage and interact in different ways on one island or one platform or one metaverse or one virtual environment. That's really interesting to me. I saw that Sandbox and Upland announced a recent collaboration. I think that could be really interesting. And I think I'd like to see where that's going to go, because these have already built a base. You know, they have the brands, they have the buildings, they have the users on the platforms like Decentraland has. And if all of you guys start connecting together and allowing for shared assets and shared digital assets, then I think even the smaller players that come in, or the smaller virtual environments that come in, can like latch onto you and create branches or create arms. So I think that's quite fascinating, and that's been allowed to happen organically and happen through OMA3, which I like the idea behind that. And I think, like, I work with another project called Site Network, and they have an idea of having like a replica of physical experiences in virtual worlds, and they've partnered with tourism bodies across the world. So they have a network in New York called the New York Culture Club, and they have a network in Wales. And what they want to do is, like, they want to replicate physical cultural experiences in virtual worlds. That's quite interesting. If you can connect those dots and have people that can experience from, again, going back to my Irish heritage, I suppose, is like, I'm here in Ireland and we're everywhere. Like, Irish people are everywhere. So I'd love to connect with the Irish people in New York or Beijing or wherever they are in the world. And I think a virtual space is a really interesting place to do that. And if we can share assets and create business models and create wearables and create events and stuff out of those places, then I think that could be really interesting. But yeah, successful activations at the moment, I'm seeing, like in Decentraland, you're doing it by bringing everyone together, right? Okay, you're bringing everyone together around the same table. You don't have to do that. You don't have to have everyone in. You could just like close it off and just have a Decentraland Gaming Expo just for Decentraland. You don't. You have it for all of the Web3 ecosystems and Web3. I think that's really powerful and a really good statement to make. And I also feel like Upland and Sandbox pairing together, that's a really powerful statement, a powerful partnership to say, okay, we're going to partner up and see what happens here. So yeah, compatibility and cross-world collaborations are really interesting. And like the guys were saying with Aavegotchi and Felix and Matt, you're doing it already. You're jumping in and out of worlds and making partnerships within different worlds. It would just be nice, I suppose, be able to communicate those what's happening a little bit clearer, you know, into the Web2 world and into the Web3 space in general, rather than being about like up and down tokenomics and that kind of stuff. Let's communicate what's happening in the space and tell the stories, because yeah, this is what you're doing. And well, I'm here. I'm happy to write some stories for you guys. But yeah, it's fascinating to even be part of or even witness.
Felix, I see you nodding about that communication aspect.
Yeah, I mean, the web in general is all about communication. It was a way to make communication more easy, and Web3 is supposed to be the natural evolutionary step from Web2. So I definitely agree, and it's a very, I feel like the main thing that we need to figure out is how to have a good platform of any way, sort of shape or kind or whatever, where people are feeling like it's easier to connect and have that like meeting point. We have a lot of them all over the Web3 space, but we're very fractionalized in that sense. And it's great to have access to all of them, but that also becomes very, very noisy. So it's like a balancing act between finding a select few things, which you have in all these beautiful communities that we have today, but also then figuring out how to cross-pollinate and really make sure that everybody is getting along and are in the place where they want to be. It's similar to like big organizations. I used to work within Amazon, and that was one of the typical things they have there. It's like you should work in a team for a couple of years, and then you should try and split up those teams and cross-pollinate to make sure that everybody gets to interact with each other and build a strong, tight-knit, stronger collective. And that's kind of what I feel like we're describing here as well.
Yeah, there's some really interesting points coming across. I think if you are within the Decentraland community right now and you want to be part of this discussion, please do send us the questions. You can leave them on the LinkedIn channel. You can tweet them on Twitter, X. You can comment on YouTube. It's all coming in right now on StreamYard. We are live across all of those channels and also into Decentraland Plaza itself. So it feels like we've got a little bit of cross-platform going on as we speak in this panel. And I kind of want to bring us back to this idea of what the future holds. What is the ideal that we're working to in terms of cross-game compatibility? So yeah, that kind of visioning, what do we see as the ideal going forward in the next 3 to 5 years in terms of perhaps Web3 or wider? What do you see as being this ideal that we're all leading towards? And I wonder, I think, Matt, would you like to start us off on that?
Damn, that's a far-reaching question. I wish I had more time to percolate on this. But I think we're scratching at a vision of the future that we'd like to see, which involves just larger numbers, right, across the board. A lot of folks have set up and are setting up businesses in this neck of the woods, right? So on a dollars and cents, from dollars and cents perspective, you want to make sure that these projects are able to sustain themselves, right? And then ideally, since we're involved in crypto, somehow that there's this like upside for users. And it's not just, all right, we're creating a context where we're trying to extract maximum potential value from each of our users. Like, of course, we want to get some value, but we want to make sure that value is distributed across people that are enjoying and participating here. So again, it's super vague, super general, but more just bigger numbers. And ideally just like these worlds that we're inhabiting, having that vibrancy, right, within them, so that whenever you're hopping in somewhere, you're bumping shoulders with another avatar, maybe from another community that you hadn't come across before. And having that sort of reliability in terms of just knowing that you will be able to have a fun experience with other people, ideally from around the world, or maybe like if you're from Ireland, from your neck of the woods too, and you can go to an Irish pub in whatever virtual world you're in. That is a really fun vision of the future, potentially. So sorry for the vagary, but that's sort of where I'm at right now.
Well, I'm going to push you on that vagary.
Okay.
because you were mentioning when talking about this, the DNA of the WIP meetup,
Mm-hmm.
which again, we're going to be jumping over to after this panel. But you were saying that for you, it's this sense of bleeding edge niche exploration. That's bringing people together to do that bleeding edge kind of explore. You feel that the whole thing, all of these worlds together is your game. How would that change for you if we saw the success of something like the numbers of Fortnite across all these environments that we're working in? Do you think the WIP would be able to maintain that DNA?
Yeah, I mean, the DNA of the WIP, it didn't come from the creation of the WIP back in January 2020. It came before that at Cent, which is like this crypto-powered blog where a bunch of artists and like folks that were, again, at the bleeding edge of crypto, NFTs and that, kind of found a little home. And the bleeding edge, just by virtue of being like a limited space, is always going to be like at a smaller scale. So that's something that myself and Rizzle, like we've come to grips with and like really understand that as like a fundamental fact of being at the edge of the frontier, so to speak. So as long as we're optimizing for that, I think that smaller scale necessarily will lend itself to kind of keeping this group intact. And I mean, it would be interesting to see if like there's just a huge number of people that are just, they want to put themselves through a bunch of different obstacles, figuring out new tools and things like that to figure out how things work. But in our experience, like it's just a smaller group, and that actually lends itself to keeping that kind of container together for a longer period of time in a very similar, like relatable, expectable way.
Felix, I'm going to bring you in because obviously your community is at a very different size to the WIP. Neo Tokyo, we're talking hundreds of thousands, I believe, in your wider community. Like, what do you see as the vision for you coming from that perspective?
Ooh, that's also a tough question. From the Neo Tokyo community, I would say, community size wise, we're not that big, but when it comes to network wise, I think we're definitely reaching those numbers for sure, given that we have some heavy hitting members in there. I think that the key thing there is to really tie back to what we said earlier. Neo Tokyo is a good meeting point for all those creators and builders, and figuring out a path forward where we can go beyond something like Discord and so on to really have that meeting point is what I think is going to be the long-term goal. Because it would be, to me, it would be very interesting to make sure that we have a strong, unique selling point to attract more great minds into the community. Because at some point it wears off, and that's typically the thing with networking groups over time, regardless, right? People go in there, they make a lot of connections, and then when they've made all the connections, they don't have any real reason to stick around. And I want to figure out what can we do there to make sure that we have that stickiness, because we also want to make sure that the community can live on, and that means that we need to bring in revenue to the treasury and so on, and make sure that the thing can actually work as an organization. So I think, yeah, it's not much of an answer, I would say, but figuring out what we can do there to really make sure that the people who come in, they want to stay, and then create more of an attraction point there from the people that we have in there as well, and collaboratively build something greater.
So that's the Neo Tokyo kind of perspective. But for you, as a builder, as a maker, what for you is the vision of the future when we're talking about cross-game?
For me, myself, it heavily ties into that as well, because I love building, and I love building with great minds. I'm a very strong proponent of surrounding myself with people that are smarter than myself, and I want to get into a position where I can continue to be creative and build on all of these things. That's kind of where I want to be. I want to be a key cog in the machinery that is building towards this. So I'm working towards that myself right now, but being in a position where I can continue to contribute to the development ecosystem, help kind of refine and create these standards and so on for continuous cross-game compatibility, and then see it actually get adopted is the main thing, I would say. That's where I want to be in the near future. And long term, hopefully we can build something that can make it even easier to achieve that for people as well.
So being part of this movement that then gets adopted.
Yes, for sure.
Jason, how about you?
Yeah, I think that's, Felix touched on some great stuff there. Personally, I could speak personally and, on behalf of the project, but I know from the founder's perspective, it's always been to build in public a community-owned gaming studio. And I think we've really put our money where our mouth is, legitimately, by giving the DAO 75% of the funds raised in our token sale. So we really did empower the DAO, and we've built in public this whole time. Personally, I have a deep understanding of NFTs from becoming a community member of Aavegotchi early on. And from my perspective, it's really my goal to build this and develop this brand as much as possible. I think the vision is something that is very honorable, and I believe in the project. So I feel like it's a great platform for us to educate, people of all ages of, what the future of gaming can be. We see Web3 and crypto as a utility layer that adds tons of value to the player experience. Obviously, there's so much else tied into it with the speculative assets involved, but we do believe that the end game here is empowering players that we're already seeing being empowered through various tools. Like we've seen gamers become content creators over the past 10 years and build careers out of that. Crypto gaming is just the natural evolution of all of that, and a way to empower those gamers and creators to be even more effective at what they're doing. So I think, it's really just to maintain a focus on building towards that common goal. And to also speak on a little bit of what Felix was saying, it's a bit contrary to what we're doing here, but there's almost a need for some re-centralization now that we've created all of these decentralized products. We need to figure out a way to take all of these communities that have been working in their own individual vacuums and now bring them together. And that is why Nifty Island was such an awesome project. I think they did what a lot of other projects were claiming that they were going to do over the last 2 years, which was really not that big of a lift. It just took a little bit of selflessness, and I think being open to allowing these communities to come participate in a way that was meaningful for all of them individually. So I think that we're just going to see a constant evolution from here, and we just want to be part of that evolution.
Lisa, I'm bringing you in, your vision.
Oh, I absolutely agree with the guys. And I think you've said everything that I could possibly say in terms of like the vision for the future of Web3 gaming. I think, as you said, we've seen builders and developers and projects build amazing technology now, you know, with Decentraland, with Aavegotchi, with everything that everyone's built on the panel and elsewhere. And I think that it's time that we kind of re-centralize it and bring it back in and showcase what it can do and showcase the offering. I think cross-compatibility and portability of assets could really show off what sovereignty and ownership can bring to the table in terms of gaming. And also from my point of view, I suppose my vision, and it's a small but big one, but in the physical world, we have an Irish pub in every street or in every village. I want to bring an Irish pub to every metaverse and every virtual space. And I want to make sure that cultural heritage and identity is maintained and showed off and really brought into the virtual space, as well as new identities, whatever, but Irishness and Frenchness and, you know, United Statesness and Japanese and whatever. I love that. I love looking at the history and seeing how we can relive history and relive culture and heritage and bring it back in. But portability and reducing friction, I would say, in order to get people in. I'm copying some of what the guys said yesterday on the panels, but reducing friction in general for users to just jump right in and collect the wearables and get involved. I think that would be really cool to see in the next few months.
So I'm going to do some plugs based on what you just said. This is the VRM Expo in Decentraland. So if you're new to Decentraland and you haven't played with this yet, have a look on your backpack, jump to your backpack on your avatar. So you can get there by hitting your little circle in the top right-hand corner of the screen. And then you'll see next to it, there's a thing that says VRM Export. So if you click on there, you download your VRM file, and that just goes directly into your computer. And you can see that one of the things in my equipment right now is that what I mentioned with Aavegotchi, that I haven't enabled VRM export, but we can. So we can mint some second edition of this for all community members. Kim's just confirmed that we can do it, that if Aavegotchi, you can give us permission to add this to VRM export. It means that we can export that, the beanie hat, and that can be then used in all other metaverse virtual world environments that accept the VRM standard. But you can see that everything else that I'm wearing can be exported, and then I can just export that as a VRM and take it wherever I go. So if I unequip that, I can export it, and then that downloads as a file directly onto my computer as a VRM. That's super cool because then I can wear that across all of my world. So on Cyber, Nifty Island, anywhere that accepts the VRM. Back to Decentraland Game Expo, so I can close this down. Oh, if we go. And you can see that there are various booths. So this is your first time in Expo. This is the first Decentraland Game Expo that we've put together. And it was really important for us on our side to show this kind of inter-game compatibility. So you'll see there are 26 different booths from different games, from across chains, from across mechanics, from across gameplay, and you can jump from those booths to another. We're going to be doing that directly after this panel session in our very fun, immersive whip tour with Matthew and Rizzle. And I think, Jason, you're going to be joining us as well across platforms on the Meme Explorers Discord, where we're going to be having voice for that. But before we wrap up this panel, I'm just going to check with Kim. Do we have any burning questions from the community? And you see,
hey everyone, we are good. We've been answering questions in the chat as they come up. So I think you've covered everything, but great reactions overall.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to then open that up to a cross-panel compatibility session right now. Perfect. And I kind of want to get some questions going all ways. So I know that Lisa, you're going to have some questions. Jason, Felix, Matthew, is there anything you'd like to ask to anyone else on the panel in the last 5 minutes of our session?
Well, I do like what I'll jump in a bit if you don't mind, but I do like what WIP is doing, is in like taking a community and bringing it to different worlds. Like, how do you decide what world you're going to jump into, what event you're going to take part in, or where you're going to be? Is it just a consistent, regular slot you do every week, or?
Yeah. With the regular schedule, doing this going on 5 years now, it is helpful because we have this broader network of builders and creators and community stewards that we know. And like, for example, with Bay, we have this informal, like quarterly, Bay has this cool opportunity coming up in DCL. Like, can we weave it into the whip? Yeah, of course, for sure. Let's bake it in, let's go. Same thing with like Jason and Aavegotchi. Like, I think they've been on the whip maybe 7-8 times at this point. Like, new updates come up, like Jason, whomever reaches out, we have this cool thing. Is there an upcoming whip that's open? Yes, let's go. So again, the reliability of a regular schedule, and then just growing that base of participants, builders, creators, everyone, it has created this great flow of inbound opportunities and activations and events. And of course, just each, like myself and Rizzle and the rest of the whip crew that we've assembled, we all have our own kind of radars that help us lock onto and clock different projects that, again, like we can selfishly schedule in whenever we want. So that's been a huge, advantage, and just makes things a lot easier.
I love it. I want to get involved because, you get involved in spaces. And if you're interested in metaverse and virtual environments, then like this sounds like a virtual world, a virtual way to get involved and be part of the community. So I completely want to learn more about what you're doing. And
shoot me in a DM. I was going to DM you right after this to get something set up so we can hit up the Irish pub over in Sandbox.
Super. Let's do it.
I love this. I love the in-panel networking going on. So, Jason, how about you? Any questions for the rest of the panel?
No, I'm still a little sore over the original Neo Tokyo Mint, but I'm not going to bring that up on this. Even though it was in the contract and I had followed and did everything I was supposed to, but Alex is not the one to discuss that with. So I will stay quiet for now.
I burned a lot of money that mint. I still get goosebumps and shivers. I wanted to ask you one question though, because I know Aavegotchi has been very, very good with a strong, tight-knit builders community and so on as well. And I know you've had like challenges and so on, and like creative hackathons and so on. So is there anything you can hint on, like pioneering that Aavegotchi is going to be launching as a DAO or a community in the future? Because I mean, as you mentioned, you were ahead of the curve when it came to composable NFTs and so on.
Yeah, I think at this point, we've almost got too far ahead of the meta. Everyone's got a TGE going on and our token's 3 years old. So we've kind of used up a lot of the tricks early on before a lot of other projects did. However, one thing I think that was very innovative that I didn't mention that I do want to mention is that we built on the Diamond Standard, which was very early on looked at as maybe not truly in the crypto ethos because it was able to be changed, but that allowed us to avoid multiple migrations and bridging, which allowed us to not alienate our community. So I think that was a really good example of where, back to like the decentralized and centralization discussion where, you know, you have to kind of take into account what it is you're trying to build and do what's best for the project there. I think right now what's kind of the most interesting thing we're doing is our player progression and the way that we're building profiles and the profile system out for players that access our games directly through the virtual console. There's going to obviously be all of these different ways to access our games, and there'll be incentives for people if you're using Hyperplay or Carve or OneKin or any of these, you know, third-party companies. But we're working very hard on creating like a very strong player profile and player progression system inside of your Aavegotchi gamer player profile. And there's some stuff there that I think we're doing that's a bit innovative that I can't really discuss. But I think that that's kind of where we're putting a lot of attention, because we think that players on-chain identity that's like the holy grail moving forward, is that gamers are going to now be able to take all of their accolades and all of their achievements from one game to the next. And we want to make sure that people are being rewarded not only in our gaming ecosystem for things that they've done in our ecosystem, but as good stewards of Web3 and the NFT communities that they're part of. How can we create player incentives that tie into different gaming experiences based on those like Web3 profiles and identities?
Jason, I think we could continue this panel for the next hour. It's been an absolutely fascinating discussion. I know that we've got to jump across. So if you are in World with us in Decentraland, we're going to be doing a tour right now with the WIP meetup. So this is your first WIP and first Decentraland. You are in for an absolute treat wherever you are in the world. It's going to be really, really fun. So just before I do, I want to thank everybody. So Lisa, Jason, Felix, and Matthew for joining us on this fascinating panel all about cross-game compatibility. And yes, please, I'm going to be dropping the Discord links into the in-world chat. We're going to be jumping now. Our voice, I think, is going to be in the Meme Explorers Discord. If that confuses you, don't worry. I'm going to be putting the links in the chat in world and also on the socials. So thank you to everybody. It's been such a fun panel, and I look forward to seeing you later on at the WIP meetup and also in a few hours' time when we're going to be doing our second live panel discussion of day 2 of DCLGX. Thank you all so much. See you soon. Bye-bye.